All right, so good evening, everybody. My name is Jasper Smith, also known as Mr. Bill Wealth, and I want to welcome you all to FinLit Tuesday. This is a collaborative effort between the Bill Wealth Movement, which is my business and company, and the Urban Financial Services Coalition, which is a volunteer-based nonprofit. And so we decided at the beginning of the year to do a little something for the community for the whole year. And so we're going to cover a variety of topics each session. The FinLit Tuesday happens every fourth Tuesday on Zoom. And I'll actually have the schedule posted at the end. So that way, if you all want to tune in to a specific topic, feel free to do so. But all the sessions are ready for you to register. And I always encourage people to just share this with like one person. Because if you share it with one person, they may share it with one person, and you know how this whole thing works, right? It's all about who said what and who told me what. And I think if you get any value out of tonight's session, I just want people to know that like we do this all year. So I want people to do better financially. And I know that I can have some say in what they do. And the Urban Financial Services Coalition, or UFSC, also cares deeply about doing more for the community. And this is not about a color thing. This is money is a language that a lot of us don't speak that well. And so I just feel compelled to continue to do this work to try to make a difference and leave it in the individual's hands to kind of decide, will they do something different or will they continue down their current path? So we'll keep things pretty loose for the session tonight. And again, if you have any questions as we're going through, feel free to stop me at any point. Or if there's something you don't want to kind of share with the group publicly, feel free to leverage the chat. And as we get started here, a little bit about the Bill Wealth Movement. My mission is, I'm gonna say it's simple because it's three words, but I'm here to disrupt generational poverty. It's a loaded phrase that I continue to think about of how I do more to help break down some of these, I'll say, these habits that people have formed over generations. And I look at, poverty as a mindset, but I feel like I can do something about it. And so part of my mission is to do all that I can. And it's sessions like this that I feel like I'm making a difference. I don't sometimes get the validation. Some people don't tell me sometimes that they're doing better as a result of listening or tuning into a session. But in all of my efforts, this is what I'm about. I plan on doing this with all of my efforts. And if I just help one person, then I can feel good knowing that, hey, I did what I could for that one person, and I'll keep doing my best to spread the love. So the Urban Financial Services Coalition, I'll read this to you so we have some time, but it's to be the preeminent resource organization in the financial services industry that provides professional development programs, supports educational advancement, and promotes economic empowerment for its members and minority communities at large. So as you all can see, a lot of synergies exist between this nonprofit organization that I support and my company's mission. And just so everybody knows, the Urban Financial Services Coalition is made up of 100% volunteers. So we literally do this because we care. Literally, nobody gets paid to be here to do this work, but we feel compelled to do our part to try to make a difference. So tonight's topic is all about credit, and it continues to be a huge impediment in terms of people's journey to financial success. And so as you think about tonight's session, think about some goals that relate to your current credit situation. And we can look at it from kind of three lenses, if you will. And you want to always think about a quick win. What's something that I can do today, tomorrow, or even next week that will help kind of get me going or working towards a goal as it relates to credit? So we got to do something quick. Next is we have something big, a big win. So maybe we need a little bit more time, from a month to maybe about a year in length, but these are going to make us feel a little bit better because we got started with the quick win, but now we're building upon those quick, easy wins. But now we got some bigger things that we can check off our list. So as it relates to your credit situation, be thinking about, hey, what are some things that I know I can't get done right now, but that I need a little bit more time to accomplish. And then the last one, the ongoing victories. And these are our habits. We've all got some bad ones that we need to kick. And this is probably the toughest for most of us, especially if you're an adult, because you may be ingrained in some of the things you're doing, the lifestyle you lead, but that's where it gets good. And that's where you really see the growth is if we can make some adjustments to those habits, then you really start to turn that corner. And you should, if everything's going as it should, you should see some positive results. So let's talk about credit tonight. So what is it? It's the ability of a customer to obtain goods or services before payment based on the the trust that the payment will be made in the future. That's it. Somebody just, we're going to allow you to make a purchase and we're going to trust that you can pay it back. That's it, right? Or a shorter definition is you could, some people would call it other people's money or OPM. And so that's essentially what credit is. It's not your money. You're borrowing the money to pay for some good or service. And you're gonna promise to pay that person back on time, or hopefully on time. So if you did not know, there are three credit bureaus, and they are all equally important. There's TransUnion, Equifax, and Experian. I hear this a lot simply because of some of the applications that are available today. So the popular one, which I'll go ahead and call out, is Credit Karma. You get 2 out of 3. You do not get the Experian report or score from a Credit Karma. So I had to start explaining this to people simply because we were getting this false sense that everything is okay. So we could see TransUnion, Equifax on a Credit Karma, but when I would sit down with people, I would always say, "Do you have all the pieces of the puzzle?" And for many of us, we don't. And I stopped taking this for granted that people knew that there were 3 bureaus. The reason these come into play is actually a real life example. I was applying for a credit card some years ago, and they had only checked my Experian report to make the determination as to whether I can get a new credit card. Now, I didn't know that ahead of time, but had I been thinking about, oh, I got Credit Karma, I got 2 out of 3, I'm good. Maybe there could have been a blemish on the Experian report, but luckily for me, I was making sure to check in all 3 just to make sure. So, I didn't know who the company was going to use to check, but when I read my report, they had only checked Experian. So I want to make sure people understand that there are 3 credit bureaus, and all 3 of them are important. All right, so let's talk about the score. Everybody's obsessed with the score. The world is obsessed with the score. And we kind of know this already. The higher the score, the better. And if you've ever, had bad credit, or you're just starting out on your credit journey and your score wasn't where you wanted it to be, things can improve. Let me first say that. But you want to get to that point where I'll say, I like saying 720 plus, but for the sake of this diagram here, that maybe you're, high sixes. I want to get everybody over 720 with all 3 of your scores, but it's literally more expensive to just have the same goods with a lower credit score. So I recently did a post on social media around, 2 people buying a car, and the tale of the tale was simply who had the lower credit score saved more money. So car cost the same, the different cars cost the same amount, but when it came to financing and getting that car loan, the person with the lower interest rate was going to pay less over time. So there is this kind of cost to having, I'll say, poor or very low credit. That there's a cost to that, and depending on how low, I mean, some people just won't even talk to you. Well, I should take that back. Somebody will always loan you money, is what I've come to find out now. Living in this country is, you know, the terms might not, or definitely will not, be in your favor. But I want to encourage more people to really take their credit seriously. And if this is a point, there's this contentious point in your life where credit is bothersome or is causing you to pay more, I think we should devote some more time and effort into learning more about our situation. And again, it's understanding that the score is just an indicator of what's being reported about you. So it's a quick way for people to make a determination about you just simply based on that number. So the FICO score itself, because again, a lot of us are so obsessed with understanding how this score works. So for this session, we specifically talk about the FICO score. There are some other scoring models. They're not as popular as FICO, and so we don't go into detail around those during this session. But because this is the most popular, we spend our time here and kind of give you that breakdown of what makes up this score. So the two biggest chunks that you can see here, 65% are your payment history and the amounts that you owe. Payment history. We talked about time a little bit earlier. Are you paying stuff on time? All the time. And if you're late, are you late all the time? And has this been a problem consistently? History tells a lot about you. And this is my thinking. I can make an assumption about you by looking at your score, and I have never met you. Just based on that number or looking at that history, I can kind of make up a story about your life. And this is why credit is so important, because somebody is reading a report about you, but you're not there to defend yourself. Like that's the key thing to remember around credit is you're being judged by somebody. So I would want to know or should know what is going on with my report to my score, so I'll know how to address them accordingly. The amounts that you owe, 30%. So if your credit limit is 5,000, are we hovering at 4,999 all the time? Like every month, are we that close to the limit? Not saying you can't pay it off if you have the means to do so, but from a lending perspective, they're looking to see like, why is this person always near the limit? Like, how much credit do they have access to at any given time? So how much you actually owe also has a huge bearing on that score. Now, the knowing the big two are important, and the bottom three, I've seen some people just in my time, they focus a lot more on these items when again, you can see the 30 or 35%. You can see where you should be focusing. But again, for the sake of this session, I love explaining all of these so that way you're well aware of how this game works, because that's all it is. It's a game, and these are part of the rules you need to understand. So the types of credit, uh, two types, if you will. There's revolving and there's installment types of debt. So when I think revolving, I want you to think about a credit card where that payment is not going to be like that minimum payment is not the same every month. It will fluctuate. Now, an installment is like a student loan. Payment's the same every month. So when they're looking at your score or your report, it's only 10%, but what kind of mix do you have of installment debt and revolving debt? So I'll give you an example. At one point, I only had credit cards. I never had like student loans, car loans, that kind of stuff. I didn't have a mortgage ever. And so my score wasn't as high as I thought it should have been. And I was listening to somebody's webinar and I was like, oh, this personal loan thing. So I took out a personal loan to pay off the credit cards. And literally, my score went up in a short period of time because I now had an installment debt. Weirdest thing in the world. I don't know why that is, but I literally went and took out more debt. Well, I kind of didn't take it out. I shifted the debt that I had from credit cards to this personal loan, but it actually improved my credit. And I saved a little bit of money on interest. But again, it's only 10%, but it actually helped boost my score a little bit. So new credit is also 10%. We're just looking here at, are you always applying for that new credit card? Are you, at the checkout line at your favorite store when we could shop in stores? Oh, you can save that additional whatever percent they say. I mean, that's new credit. Like you don't need to do it all the time. And so if it gets out of control, just know that could adversely affect your score. Now, you also see queries or people ask a lot about inquiries and how that affects your score. They're not that big of a deal. Inquiries, again, I'll say, are not that big of a deal. Unless you have like a lot in a short time frame. And what I mean by that is gentleman I was working with some years ago was shopping for a new car. And so what he would do is go to the used car dealership, and they were running his credit at every dealership where he was looking to get a car. So he had an insane amount of inquiries in a month's time frame. So it did adversely affect his score because he was doing a little too much. So what would have been recommended is going to your bank or credit union, determining how much of a car you could afford. Then you're not going to the used car dealership asking about financing. You already know what you can afford. You can avoid a lot of those inquiries. But I'll also say, if you've ever had a credit card, done a loan, or you've had to borrow some money or use credit, then as a part of business, somebody's always kind of checking up on you. It's not all the time, but if you look at your score, you'll see inquiries, and it'll be from kind of the same few companies that you may have had a credit card with or a loan. That it's just this business piece that we sometimes can't avoid. And then the last section is 15%. It's the credit history. So a lot of people tell me that they have that credit card that they got when they were young, and they say, I don't need the car, and then they close it out. Now, if you close that card out and it's been 15 years, well, you've hurt yourself there. That 15%. Like, they're looking, how long have you had this account? So I'm a fan of not necessarily closing out accounts unless you like have to do it, because you lose all that history. So if I'm a lender, I want to see how long have you been doing this? Like, it's like anything else, right? It's almost like a test. Have you been able to borrow money and pay it back, and borrow money and pay it back over a sustained period of time? Again, I know it's only 15%, but when we're thinking about like why my score might have dropped, it could have been as a result of you paying off a credit card and then closing it out. So be very mindful of the dates, because it does affect your history, which again, it's only 15% of your score, but it could be a factor when you're looking at your numbers. Right. Actually, before I go into the rights, actually, I'll go ahead and click over. So if there's any questions, comments, concerns, feel free to jump in. I know the session will go by really quick, but I do kind of like to have some conversation if there's something that has resonated with you, if you have a good story you want to share. And again, feel free to chime in at any time that you like, or leverage the chat function, and we can talk it out.
Jasper, I did have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I've heard that um, credit scores and credit reports can differ based on like things like gender or race or and I guess I've always wondered like how did they do that? Like it's a company. How do they know all of all of that?
Oh, that's a good. So I've heard the same thing. I've never been able to like get a firm answer as to is it true or not. And
Hmm.
I think for me, it's if I haven't been able to prove it. I think that's the
Okay.
honest answer. And what you'll find, I'm glad you brought that up. So here's my problem with credit. There are some things we will never get answers to.
Hmm.
And the fact that I've done credit counseling for people in the past, even to this day with clients, sometimes I have to get them to understand that we're not going to get the answer. And in the real world, it just won't make sense.
Hmm.
And it's a challenge because we want the answers. Like, why is this, or why is it this way? I wish I had answers. And if I did, I'd probably be a bazillionaire because I would have the recipe. And I should say this too. This actually plays into like your score. So we talked about there are three credit bureaus. Your score will never be the same at all three.
Hmm.
And when somebody said, well, why is that? I say, well, one, honestly, I do not know. But if I were to ask everybody on this session to bake an apple pie, I know I'm going to get three different or two different apple pies, or five
Hmm.
different. However many people I ask, the recipe is going to be slightly different. It'll still have apples. There'll still be a crust, but somebody's going to use more cinnamon, more nutmeg. Somebody may have that special ingredient. So that's how I try to explain credit scores, because they're never going to tell us how they really do it. We get that breakdown of the FICO model, and they keep updating their model like all the time. And so, why? Gosh, I think at this point, I don't even care why they do it,
Hmm.
because I don't have the kind of time to do that research. But if I understand these primary components about how to act accordingly and act responsibly, then I almost have to tell myself I have to be okay not knowing completely. But when I get the results and understand that the results pretty much match up with their scoring models, I can sleep well. Some people can't. Don't get me wrong. Some people will keep digging. And I'm like, I don't have that kind of time. My credit's good. The stuff works. You gotta believe me.
Mhm. Right, right. Okay, thanks, thanks.
Yeah, no problem, no problem. But it's tough, that's the problem with credit is that you do not get a lot of answers, but yet they're like, "Well, I can improve your credit if you do this and that." I'm like, "Well, it's not always the case. It's not always the same for everybody's situation." And I think once I stopped fighting it, I just got comfortable understanding that they're not going to tell me what the secret sauce is. But if I can learn enough about how I can like maneuver, then I sleep well knowing that, hey, I'm doing all the right things they said I should do, and I'm getting the
Mhm,
validation by having a good score.
mhm.
If you
Cool.
go deeper than that, you're going to drive yourself crazy.
Yeah,
So, um,
nice.
yeah. So this next slide is talking about rights. I'm not going into this one. Look, I leave it up there for an extended period of time, just so you can kind of make a note of you have some rights. And this is what I'll say a lot of, we'll call them credit repair companies or agencies. They, for the most part, understand these rights that you have. And they understand that there are certain laws and ways of how you are supposed to conduct yourself if you are a lender, if you're a debt collector, when you're applying for things. And so, Nalani, this also kind of speaks to your point around how do they know? Well, they shouldn't be asking you questions about gender, race, and there's a laundry list of other things that should have no bearing on credit. Now, you all forget that there are human beings that do this work. So we're not talking to computers. So you walking into a bank or a credit union, they can physically see. And I've heard some people tell me that they avoid physically going in just so they can rule out that part of maybe it's racism, maybe it's, something else, and so when you do things online, they don't have that visual. So it's just some information that comes through and they have to make a decision. And so I've heard some people who just say, hey, I do all my stuff online if I'm applying for a loan, because maybe seeing you causes them to do something. And again, I'm generalizing, but we know these cases happen. I'm not going into that during this session, but you do have rights and you should know them. Or if you're in a situation, it may be in your best interest to begin to take a look at some of these a little bit more in depth if you're in a situation. So there are some rules that people should abide by, but if you don't know them or have an idea around them, then yes, there are some entities that may abuse this credit process. So this resource, give you an instruction, share this with everybody. So annualcreditreport.com gives you your free reports from all three bureaus, and you can get them once every 12 months. Now, that was the rule prior to the pandemic. So it then became this, you can check them every month through April of 2021. They changed that. I just checked before this session. You can still check it every week. Now, I don't know if you need to check your credit reports every week, but this resource allows you to do that. Now, it is just a report. And so somebody may say, well, I need to know my score. Well, if you've ever checked your score on a Credit Karma, I would still maybe go to this resource and actually look at my reports in its entirety because they have a relationship directly with the bureaus. It's a thorough report. And a lot of people, I would say pre pandemic, did not know that by law, you are entitled to one free report from all three of the credit bureaus. And so I stopped assuming that people knew this because nobody was checking. So Credit Karma is great once again, but I'd rather go right to the source. Annualcreditreport.com is the source that I always send people. I say, get the reports, take a look, and get to work. And what you'll find is the biggest errors on reports, misspelled names, a bad address, bad phone numbers. So your basic identifying information may be wrong. And I don't want somebody looking at my report and seeing an address where I've never lived, a phone number that does not or has ever connected to me. A I even had an issue where they misspelled my middle initial, and so I said, "This is not me." Now they corrected the error, but I want your report to be so clean that if anybody picks it up and looks at it, there will be no surprises to you. So if you had somebody look at your report and they said, "Oh, Kobe, we found such and such," you should not be surprised because you've already checked. You've done the work ahead of time. So we have to be more proactive around checking our reports and then taking some action. So please share this with everybody that you know around this. If they don't check their credit consistently, they're not going to download a Credit Karma. Send them here at a minimum so they can at least obtain their free credit reports from each of the three credit bureaus. Right. So let's talk about some of these, we'll call them negative accounts. And you may have some collections and things like that. It's not the good stuff, but give everybody some I'll say some points to think about and consider as you're trying to, I'll say, clean up your credit or improve your credit. Settling is it's a good process. And it's just you understanding these steps of the process will help you if you're ever in a situation. And just know you don't necessarily need somebody to do this for you. It's not really hard. It's just you got to believe that it works. So settling just means you're not paying the full balance. So if you had an outstanding debt and it was $1,000, but you didn't pay, settling means you're paying for some fraction of that balance. Now, for collection agencies, if anybody's ever dealt with one, a lot of times they will send you a letter or some correspondence stating that, oh, you can settle this debt for 60% of the balance. Now, you have a choice. If you're in a position to settle, you can do it. Maybe you should, maybe you should. I don't know your situation, so we just want to, explore this opportunity of settling. But you always want to make sure to validate the debt. So if they're reaching out to you and you are having some dialogue with the collection agency, just make sure you actually owe it. And you should ask for verification because if they can't prove where it came from, I don't think I should be sending you money. um, and as we kind of walk down these steps, before you call this creditor to make arrangements, make sure you got some money. I hear this all the time around. I want to try to work on my collections and these negative accounts, but you don't have an income. Well, I don't think we can be worried about trying to negotiate if we don't have anything to negotiate with. So be mindful of your budget and understanding, hey, do I have something that I could negotiate with if I were to settle? Number four, super important. Please don't get emotional. This person you may be speaking with on the phone, and I'll be totally frank, they don't care about your life. They don't care about your struggles. Their job is to do one thing, that's collect this money. And if you know, fall off, go off the rails and use some I'll say some inappropriate language, just yelling or being you know, a little too abrasive, they may not even be willing to help you out. And so where you may have thought you were going to be able to settle for a certain amount, they may not be willing to negotiate. So be very mindful, be cool, calm, and collected if you're trying to settle an account. And just know people want to work with you, or people want to work with pleasant people. Again, they might not give you all the answers that you'd like if you speak with them, but be nice. If you're trying to settle something, have some food in your tummy before you call. Make sure you're rested. If you got children, make sure your kids aren't getting on your nerves. You want to be in your right mind when you're trying to negotiate because you want it to be in your favor. So again, trying to get too emotional. This is business. There's a job to be done. You need to do it effectively. So we talked about your rights, making sure you understand the Fair Debt Collection Practices Act. They just have, again, they're rules that collectors should abide by. And if not, they could suffer fines. And you need to be aware of that if you're dealing with any type of collection agencies. Reviewing that act will let you know how they should be responding to you and doing their jobs. And then the last one is just you gotta document everything. They're taking notes on you. They may have recorded lines. You want to make sure you're taking notes and you're dating things accordingly, because anytime you settle an account, seen it happen before. Somebody said they settled an account. It may have showed that they settled, and then that same debt could pop up on the same report or a different credit report at some time in the future. But if you got your documents, you got your proof, you're good to go. It takes some more time to clean it up, but at least you can say, I got my receipt. Now, settling, I've heard some people who don't like it. I'll be honest. Some people say, well, if I can't pay, why pay anything? And even if I settle my account and pay it for less than the full amount, sometimes that will be notated on your report that you settled less than full amount. So if I'm a lender, which I am not, we don't know how they're going to look at this in terms of giving you a favorable rate with your loan, for example. So I may say, you know what, Zakia, you weren't able to pay me, you weren't able to pay somebody the full $1,000. Like, I see that you settled, that's great. But as your new lender, what's not to say you're gonna do the same thing to me? And that could be one lender. Now another lender may say, you know what, Zakia, I see this account, it was settled for less than the full amount, but maybe she had a tough time of her life. But at least she paid something. So maybe that gives me the comfort and being a little bit more generous with the terms that I give you for this loan. So I don't know. And again, I don't have these answers. And so I'm not going to say settling's bad, but I think from the individual standpoint, if I've paid and settled up my debt, like I'd feel personally better knowing that I paid them something. It wasn't the full amount, but at least they got something, because you may have other debts you have to worry about. So you need to kind of get some off your list. But again, some people are like, well, I'm not going to pay on principal and I'm gonna wait it out. So it's up to you how you decide to do this thing. But just know this is going to stay on your report. It's going to continue to be a hindrance. And again, there may be some things that you just don't want to pay for whatever reason. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but I kind of want to get rid of stuff if it's bad somehow, some way. Now, before I go to the next slide here, there's this, I'll say, time frame where you're dealing with negative accounts on your credit. And the one that always pops up, which I'll touch on only briefly, there's this 7-year rule. So let's say you owed some company, you didn't pay them, so it went to this collection agency. So from the day your account went delinquent at the very first, like the original creditor, there's a 7-year window of where they can't collect. It's supposed to be removed from your report. Now, the collection agency, of course, has purchased that account from the original creditor. They've been calling you, sending you letters. They're trying to make sure you're still alive, still breathing. Make sure you're one of those addresses they can see. So some people avoid all contact and try to wait it out for this 7-year time frame. And I'll be honest, sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. I know we're looking for these definitive answers for credit, but I've seen it happen where people played the waiting game and it didn't work out in their favor. So it didn't get removed. It may have gotten removed and it showed up on a different report or on the same report. So again, credit is such a challenging thing where we're not constantly reviewing stuff. But if you're going to live by this principle of I'm just not paying, well, just it'll be there after 7 years. Maybe it falls off, maybe it doesn't. But I like to bring it up during this section because some people just don't want to pay back, and that's okay. And if you're one of those people who was really, really on the principal front, disputing. So again, under this Fair Credit Reporting Act, there's some things you got to know. So let's say you have some bad information, like misspelled name, something like that, and you want to dispute something that's inaccurate on your report. Now, I'm going to skip down to the bottom here, but you got this 30-day window, and I'm going to say 30 to 45 days because 30 was for people who still maybe send letters physically in the mail. But if you do some disputing online, which you can do through an annualcreditreport.com, they have up to 45 days for a response. So I always kind of say 30 to 45 days is the range you want to think about. But disputing is fun because it is one, it's the right thing to do if there's bad information. Let me first say that. But I always have these people who, after we go to like a credit session and we talk about like this, if they don't find you or you've been avoiding them and they can't prove that it's you, then part of this act is that it has to get deleted. So I always had some people back in the day when I was doing credit counseling at this nonprofit, and the gentleman he came to me and said, I have 13 collection accounts. And he said, you know what? I owe them all. Like, I'm not even gonna lie to you. But if I can just dispute and if they can't verify it, it's got to go by law, right? They have to remove it if they can't verify it. So he was my very first case of doing that because I had done this session a lot of times and he just said, I want to try to see, does the system work? So we disputed everything. We did it right online. And yeah, he got 10 accounts removed. So he had 13 collections, 10 could not be verified. So now he only had 3 left. So worst case scenario, we knew we owed all 13, but he said, if I can try to get some of these off my plate, we did it. We put the system to the test. Now, it doesn't always work, but for this gentleman I'm speaking about in particular, a lot of his debts were old. So the majority of his collection accounts were 2 years or longer in duration. So he didn't want to play the 7-year waiting game. If things are under 2 years, that's kind of where the focus is when you have, I'll say, negative accounts. They really know, like, what have you done these last couple of years? Because 2 years and beyond, was just my experience, was when we disputed, some things just couldn't be verified because it had been so long. So luckily for this gentleman, the waiting game worked out in his favor, and we got a lot of his negative accounts removed. Now, that's the great story, the success story. But on the flip side, I've had that same type of person sit through a session. We talked about disputing inaccurate information. They just wanted on principle not to pay. Now, some of these people were not currently working. Some people were working and just like, I'm just not paying on principle. I said, okay, let's try it out. So what happens when you dispute is you do actually open yourself up to being verified. So if they're able to say, you know what, we got you at this address, or we verified this phone number, or whatever, there are a lot of different vendors that have information about you in the universe, I'll say. And so for one young lady, she wasn't as successful as that first gentleman. They verified, I think she had about 8 accounts. They verified all 8. So she wasn't upset. She just wanted to see if she could try this method and get this done. So what you'll find is there's no right or wrong in terms of how you attack or address your credit situation, but you have options. So first off, with disputing, if it's the wrong thing, it should be disputed right away. Right away. Just again, I had a misspelled name. I disputed it. 1 year, and I checked, I had a phone number that was not mine. I disputed that, and they correct some of those very quickly. So again, you want to take your time and really go through your credit reports just to really see, do I really owe this? And if it looks a little fishy, those are the things you want to dispute just off gate. You want to say, you know what, I know this isn't me. Have no clue where this is from. Dispute it. Try it out. Again, by law, they have to respond to you. Now, the online system is, I would say, easier for some. Some people still like doing the letters. If you've ever talked with a credit repair agency company, they may claim to do one or the other, but I heard this from a banker years ago. It all goes into the same repository. That's what I heard, and I'm sticking with that. So whether you write a letter or send it online, it goes into this big database, and they still will have to make a decision about you. I've heard of some creative things people do with sending letters. It's the most outrageous stuff. I don't know if they work because I don't work at a credit bureau, but sometimes when things are challenging with the letters, they were saying they have like a machine that scans stuff in. And so as a way to kind of like jam up the system, they would send letters and put staples all the way around it. So they couldn't just kind of easily process your stuff. And so if they can't easily do it, maybe they just throw that into the garbage because they can't send it through the scanner. Again, to Nalani's point earlier, I can't prove this, Nalani, but I've heard this from a banker who knew somebody who worked in the credit bureau like years ago. But we hear all these like, can I get away with this if I try this method or this technique? And I think that's the struggle around that I have with credit counseling in general is we've heard so much information, but we can never verify will it work or won't it work. Another strategy around disputing is sending letters during the holidays. Oh, well, it's Christmas, Thanksgiving, New Year's. Maybe they have a skeleton staff. I haven't been able to prove that. So I don't know if it's better to send dispute letters at the end of the year, early in the year. I just haven't done enough from a data standpoint to see that it actually worked or it doesn't. So again, things you may have heard is what I continually hear from people when we're talking about cleaning up their credit and improving their score. We've heard some things that we can't verify that it's the truth. And I don't care what credit repair companies will promote, and they promote some crazy stuff. You know, I would hope people just understand that you don't have to actually pay for some of these things. And if you look through some of these reporting acts and disputing inaccurate information, going through an annualcreditreport.com, it's not as daunting as you may believe. And I don't think you should be spending hard earned money or money that you could be using to pay down debts in terms of paying somebody to help you do something that you could have done for free. So, three things to remember about credit: you can screw it up, you can fix it. Screw it up again, you can fix it again. That will always be the case. Make sure you order those free reports from each of the three credit bureaus every 12 months. And again, I don't know how long they're going to do this. You can check it weekly on annualcreditreport.com. So I'll say for now, you can check it a lot more frequent if you'd like, but you need to know what's happening at all three bureaus. They are all important. And whether you pay off a debt in full, you settle or dispute it, keeping your receipts and those documents confirming that payment. I had too many situations where people saw a debt that they know they paid show up years later, and all they can say is, "Well, I know I paid it." And my response is always, "If you were in a court of law, can you prove that you made the payment? Having proof will set you free. If it's on one of those bureaus that you disputed and they couldn't verify and it got deleted, then all you do is send that update that, hey, it got deleted on TransUnion. So therefore, it has to get deleted on Equifax and Experian. So having that proof of any payments that you make, any accounts that were not verified, that's how you clean stuff up relatively easy. Because sometimes it's not about disputing everything at all the bureaus. Just focus on one. And especially if that one account is showing up on all three. So you have to kind of divide and conquer and just know no matter how bad it is, it can always improve. And no matter how good it is, you can always mess it up again. So as we kind of tie this thing up here, or wrap it up, I'll say, if you need to get in touch with myself, the buildwealthmovement.com, check us out. A lot of tools and resources there to help folks, get started with things on the credit front and financial planning, et cetera. The Urban Financial Services Coalition, this is the Bay Area chapter website. That's the chapter that I support. And feel free to check out some of our programming. And again, this is the FinLit Tuesday session. So just to kind of give you the schedule, here are all the topics we'll be covering all year long. We've done money management. We started earlier this year. We just did credit tonight. So you can see we're going to tackle life insurance, investments 101, retirement 101. And if you all notice this, it's hard to really get into credit deep just in an hour. Is extremely challenging. But I give people like the key things I think they should know about this setup. Like credit is one of those areas where we'll never get all the answers we're looking for. But if we look at all these components that we covered during tonight's session, then you'll be able to move a little bit differently. But you also can share this with your family and friends because, again, so much bad information around, I'll say, cleaning up credit or credit repair. It's constantly shared in our communities. And as I think about disrupting generational poverty, I have to be, mindful that good information needs to be shared, not this bad stuff. So again, the FinLit Tuesday, every fourth Tuesday, we'll be here doing again, they're all kind of basic in nature because I think the world is in need of this part of the financial planning process. nobody's focused on the basics, or if they are, we're not seeing the results that we'd like. Like I'm not seeing them with some of my clients. I look at financial literacy programs that they're hitting with all the stuff that's a little too out there for the average person. But if we can get back to the basics and tackle a few key areas, then I just know and feel that we can do a lot better in our personal financial lives. But once we get our stuff in order, we can go be a better service to the community. So with that, I am going to pop back over. I'll stop sharing this. And that, my folks, is credit 101. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop the recording for now because that's the content itself.